We now go to the gentlelady from Missouri, Ms. Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member, for holding this hearing. And thank you to all of our witnesses for being here today. I always start my hearings by saying St. Louis and I say that because I'm all about representation. And I stand here in solidarity with all the artists, the creators, the actors whose rights and livelihoods are at risk because of artificial intelligence and generative AI in particular. Shout out to all the St. Louis musicians and artists and their fans, I gotta say that. Like any technology, generative AI is not only good and it's not only bad, as we've heard here today, but its effects on our society depend on how technology is developed, how it's used, and how it's regulated. Many artists use it as part of their creative process, as we know, from the post-recording production and mastering of audio tracks to special effects in movies to the creation of visual content and so much more. But we've also seen the horrific stories, which we've heard about and talked about much today, like the deep fake pornography. We've seen the fake endorsements of products, which we heard, and I'm sorry for what Ms. Wilson is going through. We've seen the artificially generated audio tracks, like the one that's been spoken about over and over today, like the collaboration between Drake and The Weeknd. The potential for the confusion, the manipulation, the appropriation, and exploitation is huge. And beyond that, though, I want to add something that we haven't talked about yet. We must address racial bias in AI technology. If I ask a certain generative AI technology to create a picture of a black woman, the image it creates will not look like me. The facial features and hair may be distorted. And there's a lot of other evidence of this bias. For example, Google disabled its AI program's ability to let people search for gorillas and monkeys in the Photos app, because pictures of black people would come up. And these issues aren't limited to the creative industries. We see it in healthcare, we see it in employment, we see it in the criminal legal system and other areas of daily life. We also see evidence of other types of bias and discrimination, including based on sex and disability. The risk to black artists in particular must be considered in light of our country's history. During the 20th century, crazy to say that, but for decades, during the 20th century, black musicians who pioneered new styles of music like the blues were exploited by record companies and promoters who took advantage of intellectual property law. And when machine learning technology was developed in the 1960s, its inventors did not meaningfully account for race or sex or disability or other parts of human identity. Many of today's laws and algorithms are based on earlier versions, so when laws and technology do not treat black and brown people as fully human, is it surprising that the end products don't either? Is it surprising that black and brown artists face an even greater risk of their rights being violated? I know that these are issues that artists in my hometown of St. Louis and all around the country are concerned about. So as Congress considers how to regulate artificial intelligence, we must address all of these issues and protect all relevant rights. Yes, we should work together to ensure people's voice, their image, their likeness are protected. We should also work together to address the bias built into these systems. We should make sure that AI cannot be used to discriminate against people, and that AI companies in particular, are required to be transparent, and that we don't simply trust companies whose primary goal is to profit. We shouldn't just trust them to self-regulate and do right by our artists, our creators, our actors, and our consumers, because consumers matter as well. So Mr. Mason, as the Recording Academy's first black CEO, can you share your thoughts on the importance of racial equity as a factor for Congress to consider as we debate whether to establish a federal right of publicity?
Thank you, Ms. Bush. You touched on so many really, really important points. I would just simply be repeating what you just said, but there is an inherent racial bias in AI. We know that. We've discovered that. It will affect black and brown artists disproportionately when it comes to music and art exploitation. So I thank you for what you said. It upsets me, and it concerns us absolutely. And with that, and I hate to interrupt the flow of the session, but being that it is Grammy Week and we have 10 more events coming up in the next couple of days, I have to please respectfully excuse myself if I may. So thank
Mr.
you.
Mason,
Thank
if
you.
Mr. Ivy has 1
Yes,
minute or
I'm-
less
I'm-
of questions,
I'll
would you allow
I'm
him
done.
to ask it?
Of course.
Please.
And I'm sorry,
The gentleman's
I don't mean to
recognized.
be
No, I
disrespectful.
understand you've been very good to us.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. Sorry.
And I apologize for impeding on your time, but I did have an enforceability question. Actually, a couple. So the training issue, using artists' voices in this instance to train AI to create, and the discussion has been focused on making sure that the artists